Welcome to A Moment of Zen. Time to sit back and relax as model, actress, mentor, and supermom Zen Sams takes you on a sexy and wild ride, covering the latest in film, fashion, pop culture, cryptocurrency, fintech, cannabis, and entertainment from the millennial mom's perspective. Here's your host, Zen Sams.
Hello, my beautiful friends and loyal listeners. It's always a pleasure to spend my time with you on the airwaves. Thank you for listening and interacting with me on social media. That truly does make it all worthwhile. Please make sure to follow me at Zen Sams. That's Zen with an X, not a Z. And remember that we're now on TV. Tune in at impact.kpmedia.tv and catch a moment of Zen on the Impact Live channel Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. All episodes are now available on demand. We have such a great show lined up for you today. In our influencer segment brought to us by OG Pay, we are featuring the awesome Buck Sexton. He is a wildly popular radio and television talk show host, an author, and conservative political commentator. He's also the co-host with Clay Travis of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show. Today, we're chatting about how liberal bias defines journalism and the distrust and instability it breeds into society. We'll also get his thoughts on the 2024 elections. In our Business and Buzz segment, we have returning contributor Kyle Wool, president of Revere Securities, and today he's joined by Micah Fink, founder and CEO of Heroes and Horses. Now, Micah has spent 10 years in the Navy SEAL teams, both active duty and reserves, and he's the recipient of numerous awards, including the Bronze Star. Today, we're chatting about how the program is changing the narrative for veterans and helping them heal from the inside out. In my Digital World segment brought to you by Tempest Network, we're joined by Shahal Khan, CEO of Tempest Network, and he is joined by his really good friend, Adil Kiani, Managing Director of Bullion FX, which is the world's first gold-backed, fully audited and autonomous ecosystem. Interestingly enough, Bullion FX uses gold to bridge traditional banking with the new world of crypto and decentralized finance. We're going to be chatting all things gold and cryptocurrency and the rise of the new economy. Stay tuned. We'll be right back with the awesome Buck Sexton in our influencer segment brought to us by OG Pay. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
If you've missed out dining in New York City for the past year, it's time to visit the legendary Vice Cucina. Located in the heart of Midtown, Vice specializes in blending delicious Northern Italian and American cuisine with dishes such as the incredible taglione lobster, ravioli masala, ossobuco, and pappardelle al telefono, along with many other mouthwatering offerings. You deserve a great night out. Call Vice Cucina 212-757-2600 or online at vicecucina.com.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OG Pay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OG Pay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out ogpay.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Now, up in just a few minutes, we have our influencer segment brought to you by ogpay.com. And today, we're featuring the very famous Buck Sexton. He is a widely popular radio and television talk show host, an author, and a conservative political commentator. He's also the co-host with Clay Travis of the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton Show, which is a nationally syndicated talk radio show. And you can listen to them live Monday to Friday from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, iHeart Radio. Now, interestingly enough, us radio hosts have very colorful backgrounds. He's also a former CIA officer. His assignments included the Al-Qaeda-focused Counterterrorism Center and the Office of Iraqi Analysis. Pretty impressive stuff. Today, we're chatting about how liberal bias defines journalism and the distrust and instability it breeds into society. We'll also get his thoughts on the 2024 elections. Now, many people think the mainstream media have a liberal bias, yet media spokesmen usually deny such claims. So who's right? Is there a left-wing bias, or has the right wing conspired not only to influence the media, but also to create a false image of unfairness? Well, if media bias doesn't exist, if it's just conservatives making it up out of thin air, how do the following facts exist? Are you ready? The New York Times, the so-called paper of record, has not endorsed a Republican presidential candidate dating back 14 elections to 1956. That means endorsing Democrats George McGovern, Walter Mondale, and Michael Dukakis, who won a combined 12 states over 3 elections. Talk about a disconnect. Then you have the Washington Post, once home to the Woodward and Bernstein and the winner of 69 Pulitzer Prizes, has actually never endorsed a GOP presidential candidate in its entire history. Speaking of endorsements, before the 2016 presidential election, and therefore before the Trump era in Washington, 57 of 59 major U.S. newspapers endorsed the Democratic nominee that year. Yep, some food for thought, my friends. And here to chat some more and give us his insight is the very famous Buck Sexton. Welcome to the show, superstar.
Thank you so much for having me.
Absolutely. So let's dive right in. This is your sweet spot. I know that you fact check and are honest in your output, especially on your show. There was a study recently from Harvard University that found 93% of NBC News coverage of Donald Trump's first 100 days in office was negative, matching CNN's negativity. Now, the aforementioned Times clocked in at 87% negative, the Post at 83%. Compare that, Buck, to President Biden's first 100 days, which delivered 59% positive coverage, according to the Media Research Center. Now, although the studies come from very different organizations, that's a 142-point swing from negative to positive. And this is despite inflation, skyrocketing violent crime, an insecure border, and an ongoing pandemic. What do you say to this?
Donald Trump's presidency was a sea change moment in not only the way the media thinks it does its job, but actually how they say that they did their job. So Trump created the first ever moment where the media said, it is so important for us to oppose this guy, right? It was so monstrous and scary to them that their job was no longer to be nonpartisan. That Trump was such an affront to the truth that in order to pursue truth, they had to be on offense against Trump. They openly said this at different major newspapers. CNN is a place where I had worked before the presidential election of 2016 as an on-air contributor. And then when Trump was running, I actually saw the place. It was like watching somebody who had always had a little too much to drink at parties, and you knew had a little bit of a problem, all of a sudden now was drinking a bottle of whiskey at 10 a.m. every day. I mean, it turned into a total mess over there. And CNN has never recovered from it. I don't think ever will recover from it. And what you see today with Joe Biden is a media apparatus that increasingly is fractured, even among Democrats, meaning that they don't even know necessarily what the party line is supposed to be. Obviously, they're supporting Joe Biden, but in what way and what's best for the Democrat Party? They have to do so much heavy lifting to pretend that this guy who's too old for the job and who on his best days 30 years ago was really a sub-mediocrity in politics and certainly as any kind of intellectual. They're trying to figure out what the base wants to see, and they don't even really know, which is why there's this collusion, dare I say, between congressional Democrats and the media to run all these January 6 hearings. Nobody who isn't obsessed with NPR and CNN and generally lives in New York, DC, or Los Angeles, nobody cares about the January 6 hearings that are going on. But the media is broken.
Oh, yeah. And I want to touch on the Joe Biden and the White House administration in just a second. But then there's the phenomenon of bombshells that dominate news cycles only to be debunked later, right? Like last year, we saw the media dubbed a reckless conspiracy theory story with Senator Tom Cotton claiming that COVID-19 may have come from a Chinese lab. And now it was considered an absolute reality for some, and then it was in fact investigated, and it was found to be the case. Then you have Trump ordering park police in DC to use tear gas on mostly peaceful protesters. That was another huge story, but a Justice Department Inspectors General report later released saying that it wasn't true after all. Why is it that seemingly, Buck, every huge breaking news story that ends up being hopelessly wrong is originally weaponized against one party, in my opinion, the Republican, to benefit only the Democrats? Why do these mistakes only go in one direction?
Well, the leftist activists have taken over the newsrooms of every Democrat regime media outlet in the entire country. So and they used to be, they've always been Democrats. I mean, to be clear, you go back to the 1990s at places like CNN, NPR, New York Times. It was always Democrat heavy. But now the people who say there aren't two sides to the argument, who are Democrats who say the other side shouldn't even be able to speak, they're actually calling the shots. And that's a change that's happened really over about the last 10 years. And because of social media being willing to go along with this by shutting down dangerous, whether it's about elections or about COVID. I was shut down so many times on COVID issues by social media platforms. They never come back 6 months later and say, wow, you were right.
Yeah, no, they don't.
Turns out the shots don't stop the spread. Does anyone else want to have that argument with me now? Because I was saying they don't stop the spread last fall, and here we are now, and they're saying, oh yeah, they don't. But they were able to not only control the media outlets that create a lot of this misinformation, but then to pretend under the guise of misinformation policing that the big tech platforms were doing some kind of a social service when they were really just acting as the attack dogs for the activist left in the media, and that's what they've been doing all along. So that's a huge change. And you ask, or you bring up the stories that are untrue. It's a fascinating dynamic you see with true believer Democrats and leftists now, where it doesn't matter if it's untrue to them as long as it served the purpose in the moment.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
if they run a story at, and everyone needs to understand this, if they run a story at let's say MSNBC that Donald Trump is actually on the payroll of North Korea, and and North Korea has been giving him buckets of cash to crazy stuff, doesn't matter. If enough people are able to believe it at the time and it damaged Trump's reputation, even if it later is found to be untrue, the people who run the story, the people who believe the story, are in a symbiotic relationship of delusion. They're happy to have thought that Trump was even more evil than they previously believed. And it doesn't matter that it's not true.
Yeah, no, they don't care. They're just taking it and running with it. Well, let's shift gears a little bit and come back to Trump in just a sec. But let's chat what the White House's biggest issues are, starting with how Joe Biden's biggest problem is himself. It's Joe Biden. Joe Biden could do a lot by doing nothing at all, I say. And it appears that everything he has done is crippling the American economy and destroying opportunity. High inflation, supply chain issues, and increasing regulation. Yet there seems to be no introspection about the White House's radical agenda, right? We have last year, Biden started to do what he could do to destroy the American fossil fuel industry. He killed the Keystone XL pipeline, which was actually earlier authorized by an overwhelming bipartisan vote in both the Senate and in the House. And that action outraged Canada, our closest ally. And if it had been completed, it would now be supplying about 830,000 barrels of oil a day from Canada to our refineries. And that's 4 times what Russia supplied to us. What do you say to this?
Well, it's fascinating to watch the Biden White House now try to both keep the wacko environmentalists happy, and they are truly wacko. I mean, this is a religious belief for them, and also tell the American voter that they had nothing to do with the rise in fossil fuel prices, that they have nothing to do with drop in exploration and production, or just a lack of the necessary exploration and production to meet U.S. demand domestically. So they can't have it both ways. I mean, you have Joe Biden's first day in office. He shuts down the Keystone XL pipeline, which, for anybody who's wondering, the Obama administration even did a thorough State Department-led analysis of this. And eventually they were like, look, we don't like this, but the oil is coming out of the ground one way or the other.
Exactly.
So the CO2 emissions on a global scale, it's like pouring the bucket of water in the pool, the deep end or the shallow end, it's still going in the pool. It doesn't matter. But ideologically, emotionally, it upsets them. So they shut that down. That's just one example, but it's a pretty clear one. Joe Biden ran on the campaign trail and said that we're going to phase out fossil fuels. We're going to get rid of fossil fuels. I mean, these are actually the ravings of a lunatic. And those aren't things that he's saying because of dementia. Those are things he's saying because that is what people who have been honestly brainwashed by this climate change catastrophism, that's what they want to hear. So he just says it. And that's Joe Biden's entire career is essentially, well, as we know now, selling access for the Biden crime family. But also before that, as long as he's been around, he's just been a mediocrity who tries to find the safest, most popular position within the Democrat Party and just ride that. That's all he does.
Yeah, it's interesting because when you're looking at how they're governing the administration, very difference of opinions here. But in 2008, when President Trump embargoed Iranian oil, markets barely moved. Why? You might ask. Well, because Trump carefully and very prudently arranged for our then allies, the Saudis and the United Arab Emirates, to increase their production and made sure before he did it that our allies would be supplied, and they were. Biden did none of the above before he cut off Russia, and
2018,
we thought he was a foreign genius policy expert, right? So these are the mistakes that we see over and over again. We're kind of done with it. So let's move on to your predictions for 2024 before I cut to a commercial break. I have 2 minutes with you. So as Donald Trump is really considering another White House run, polls show that he's the most popular figure in the Republican Party, and with a really large growing list of candidates gearing up to run. Even a Trump diminished by 2 impeachments and mounting legal vulnerabilities could really hold a commanding position in what truly is a fractured multi-candidate primary. Buck, will he run? Does he win? What are your predictions? You have about a minute and a half before commercial.
Oh man, that's a lot. I speak to the Trump whisperers pretty regularly, and people that are still in very close contact with him. They all insist that he is absolutely going to run. So I don't see how he won't run. If he runs, I think there is a chance that Governor Ron DeSantis of Florida will also run. I don't know who would win that primary. I think it would be very interesting. And then I think the Republican candidate, either one of them, would be able to defeat Joe Biden. But does Joe Biden run again? This is one of those decision trees, or one of those possibility trees that breaks down into many branches very quickly. I mean, there's a lot of if then. So yeah, I think that Donald Trump will run again. I think that if he is the party nominee, he will likely win again. I also, though, think that if Joe Biden sees that Donald Trump is going to be the Republican nominee, he's actually more likely to run again, because I think the Democrats only believe that Biden is well suited at this point to beat Donald Trump. So that's my whole bunch of things.
I love it. Well, we're going to come back. Don't you move a muscle. We have more to talk about. Guys, that's Buck Sexton. Definitely check him out, clayandbuck.com. And you can listen to the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show live Monday to Friday from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on iHeart Radio. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. That was our influencer segment brought to you by ogpay.com. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Caldwell Soames Incorporated, investing globally in transformative businesses like Original Digital Corporation, or ODC. ODC develops advanced consumer and commercial fintech solutions such as OG Pay, which will transform the way you manage your money. From sending and receiving money globally for free, paying for goods and services in person and online, pay bills, buy and sell digital currencies, all while earning interest. OG Pay is easy to set up, FDIC insured, and your information is secured. Check out ogpay.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcoming back to our influencer segment brought to us by OG Pay. We have the awesome Buck Sexton. Welcome back, my friend.
Thank you for having me again.
All right, so we're continuing on our conversation with your predictions for 2024. Will Trump Will Trump run? Will he win? And where we left off. So in 2000, when we look at where the polls are right now, as of 2022, of 3 weeks ago, upward of a dozen candidates could be running, including Trump's former Vice President Mike Pence and his former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo and Senator Ted Cruz of Texas, Tom Cotton of Arkansas, Rick Scott of Florida, and Tim Scott of South Carolina. All could run on the former president's policies. And that's the kicker. Then you have Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. We just spoke about him. He's increasingly seen as Trump's, higher apparent, even by Trump's most loyal supporters, and viewed by Trump allies as his most potential challenger. So there's also Trump fatigue. That might be a real thing, with voters asking themselves whether if they vote for another candidate, they can get the same policies without all the baggage. What do you say to all of this? It's a lot to unpack, but you have President Trump who set up an entire team, and now that very team is potentially going to be running. What do you say to that?
I would just step back and say that in American politics, we're seeing a resistance to the natural order of things, which is that people accumulate a lot of power and then don't want to give it up and hand it over to the next generation. I think this is actually a really big issue when you look at it in the grand scheme of things. Nancy Pelosi is too old for her job, for example. You look at someone like Dianne Feinstein. Dianne Feinstein is not able to do the job anymore and hasn't been for a long time, and her staff knows that, but she's an institution in Democrat politics in California. So the fact that she is effectively going through full-on cognitive decline, I mean, and not even at the Biden level where it is able to be hidden at some points of the day, her staff knows she's having senior moments. She forgets things. She doesn't know what's going on. That person's a U.S. senator still. This should not be allowed to happen. Biden's too old for the job, obviously. Everyone's seen that. And Democrats, I think, have been reckless in pretending that wasn't obvious from the beginning. So with that, I do actually try to apply principle as such and not just make it situational depending on who I like. I mean, I do think the biggest challenge for Trump will be, you mentioned Trump fatigue, the January 6th thing and all the circus around that, and that's not helpful. But I don't think the Trump base, I don't think Trump voters care enough about that for it to be an issue that would block him. But Trump is going to be 77, 78. Something like that, I think.
He's not young either.
It's too old. This is the problem. And if it's a choice between too old Trump or way too old Biden.
Oh gosh, you can't.
Obviously, that's an easy decision. But I'm just saying, if we're looking at choices within the GOP, and remember, the other thing that Trump has, and this isn't insignificant, is he'd only be a one-termer. So he's running to be a one-termer, which means now you're going to have to go through the whole election shenanigans all over again. Really, you're basically going to get, a year or 18 months of Trump, and then it's the midterms, and then it's the reelection of some, or rather not reelection, the new election, somebody else, because it can't be Trump. So those are, I think, the headwinds against him. Look, I make no secret. I think Governor DeSantis has done an amazing job in Florida. I think that anybody who lives in are you New York year-rounder resident too?
Yeah,
I figured.
Yeah.
I think anybody who's been through New York during the pandemic and escaped to the free state of Florida feels this debt of gratitude of just helping keep their sanity.
Absolutely.
And so I used to go down there all the time. My now fiance and I have been down there together.
Congratulations to you and Carrie.
Thank you very much. Very exciting stuff. And we're certainly considering very seriously a Florida move. So look at the numbers. The numbers don't lie. I mean,
the numbers don't lie.
People have moved to Florida because of the state. People say, "Oh, it's the warm weather and the taxes." Yeah, of course, but it's had that forever. It's had that for decades. It's had that for as long as you or me, you or I've been alive. So what changed the last few years? It's a state that's actually run properly. Unlike New York, unfortunately, which is run by imbeciles.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Well, Listen, we share the same ideals. We share the same kind of commentary here. I'm a registered Republican myself. I do think that the system is flawed. I do think that the party has its issues. I probably would consider myself more of an independent than anything else at this point. But when you look back at our founding fathers and you look at how old they were, none of them were really old at all. They were actually ranging between 18 years old and 35 years old. Maybe you had, one or two outliers in their 70s. But in general, to your point, these people are just too old to be running a country that is filled with so much energy, with so much potential, with so much beauty, but yet they're weaponizing, and drawing a line in the sand between if you're a registered Republican or a Democrat or what demographic you are, the color of your skin. Now, all of a sudden, white people, you can argue, have become the minority in certain places. So there's way too much change going on. There's a lot of turmoil. And as a mom, even living in the tri-state area, in New York City specifically, I no longer feel safe. I no longer feel like this is the city that I came to when I was 17 and was signed to elite and, had an incredible time when I would walk on the street without ever fearing and watching my back. Now I don't even take the subway. So this is not the city that I grew up to love. And it's been handed over to a pack of morons, AOC included, and all of her constituents. But that's a different conversation. I could keep going on and on. Listen, Buck, we'll pick this up again soon. I just wanted to thank you so much for coming on. It was fun chatting.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. Guys, that was Buck Sexton. Check him out on the gram at Buck Sexton. Head to their website, clayandbuck.com, and you can listen to the Clay Travis and Buck Sexton show live Monday to Friday from 12 to 3 p.m. Eastern, right here on iHeart Radio. You're listening to A Moment of Zen on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. That was our influencer segment brought to you by OG Pay. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Revere Securities. Revere is committed to building a relationship of trust in which they work closely with you to help you define your objectives, explore alternatives, and choose the financial and investment strategies that are most appropriate for you. Go to reveresecurities.com.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Up next, in our Business and Buzz segment, we have our returning contributor, Kyle Wool, president of Revere Securities. And today he is joined by his good friend, Micah Fink, founder and CEO of Heroes and Horses. Today, we're chatting about the program and how it's changing the narrative for veterans. Micah has spent 10 years in the Navy SEAL teams, both active duty and reserves. He's the recipient of numerous awards, including the Bronze Star. His experience, expertise, and passion for helping people is clearly reflected in his devotion to the Heroes and Horses program. Now, the Department of Veteran Affairs released an alarming report showing that at least 60,000 veterans died by suicide between 2008 and 2017, with little sign that the crisis is abating, despite suicide prevention being the VA's top priority. Now, Heroes and Horses' mission is to unprogram the program, to offer combat veterans an alternative solution for dealing with their scars, a solution that doesn't include prescription meds or traditional psychotherapy, but instead, horses. Now, as they get settled into the broadcast room, let's chat about these divine creatures that I, for one, am obsessed and in love with. Now, did you know that people are more willing to accept feedback from a horse than from other humans, as there is no judgment in the horse's response? People trust the horse's reflection as honest and direct. Horses have as many different personalities as the humans they work with, and a strong awareness and sensitivity to their surrounding, making them an incredible reflection of you in each moment of your experience. Also, horse family structure, similar to that of humans, encourages connection and mutual support to guarantee survival. Within the equine family, each horse counts on consistent behavior of the other members to maintain stable relationships with each other. Horses understand body language and can pick up subtle changes of every creature in their presence. Just amazing. So one's ability to successfully communicate with the horse provides the means to learn better ways of communicating with others. And here to chat Heroes and Horses are Micah and Kyle. Welcome to the show, superstars.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you, Zen. Yep, thank you.
Micah, so nice to finally chat with you. Congrats on all your success and on making a huge difference for our veterans.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that. Happy to be here.
And in part, I'd say that the Heroes and Horses program really helps veterans because it's entirely based on trust. After speaking with Clint last week, we've realized that a lot of veterans come from a distrustful place, but you're never going to fool a horse. Whether you're feeling anxious or fearful, the horse is going to know. What made you turn to horses as the basis of the program?
Well, that's a long question, but I'll sum it up the best I can. Horses are a mere reflection to who we are as people because it's the quintessential predator and prey relationship. So, horses are really designed to do one thing, and that's run away from things with eyes in front of their head. And so, the horse-human connection is a profound relationship that establishes trust between two beings that really are not designed to be together, right? They're at odds. And so the way that we do that is establishing a foundation of communication. And so many times in our life, even with people, we just communicate the way that we want to. And so when we learn to communicate on their level, which is an instinctual, intuitive level, not a cerebral and mind-based level, we begin to direct and bring up that life force energy, that animal, and then direct it with quality. And then when that quality direction begins to happen, that's when leadership is established. And then these horses they'll follow you to the death. The stories of the old Bedouins or people like Xenophon and Greek mythologies, you learn about their horses would die next to them in battle. They would just, when the soldier would come off the horse, the horse would stay with them even in death. And so, for us, the problem with the American veteran is that, we're all living some type of identity, and so much of our life is about identity projection. And horses are very honest creatures. A horse doesn't lie. A horse doesn't want to take your job. A horse doesn't want to steal your girlfriend. Well, it might, I don't know. But a horse is a very honest creature. And so they can judge your true intentions outside of what you're projecting out, this identity. And so, as you get a look outside yourself, that's when you can begin to make those incremental steps that's required to change ourselves and not to be a victim of experience, but to be to be in participation of the creation of your own reality that you're experiencing.
Really, I'm going to add motivational speaker and healer to your bio now, Micah. That was very well said. You really, it resonates. It hits close to home because you can't outbrawn a horse. They're faster than you'll ever be, and they're probably as smart as you are too, right? So it's very humbling. I'm realizing that from what you're saying is you have to look within and be creative just to find a way to work with the horse. So kudos to you for the work that you do. Kyle, I missed you. So nice to chat with you again.
Good to see you, Zen.
All right. Well, listen, I know that you recently were over at the ranch, and the overall idea is to stay present, focused, and in the moment with the help of a trained four-legged companion at your side. You recently had the opportunity of visiting the ranch and even got to ride. I know that Revere Securities is a proud supporter of the program, and we are as well right here at WOR. Heroes and Horses is game-changing. But now you also are quite the deep individual, as I know you, often using your gut and intuition to guide you in the decisions you make in business and personal. But as the president at Revere Securities, you're faced with a ton of pressures. What did you learn while visiting the ranch? How was your overall emotional state after leaving? And why are you so committed to supporting this program?
Well, I think the program itself is amazing, what they're doing for these veterans, getting them off the opioids and getting them focused on, the land and being with each other in the 41-day program that Micah and his team has put together. But also for me, just to get out into like Ennis, Montana and Virginia City, Montana, and to see the natural, spectacular beauty of that space and to see the openness and to see probably how most of humanity has existed through our entire history is more in that setting than the urban jungle that we live in here in New York City. And I think whether you're in the mountain at night with someone like Mike and one of his friends looking at the stars and you see about 1 billion stars up there with no ambient light, or you're just sitting there on the ranch watching these guys work with the horses, it's something that kind of touches your soul and brings you back to the essence of what it is to be a man or be a woman and really to be a human.
Yeah, I love it. You're so deep, buddy. You're so deep. Micah, our military veterans are facing unprecedented challenges really as a result of their service to our nation and their dedication in protecting your dedication in protecting our freedom, going into undeterred and into hostile environments can't be overlooked, especially upon returning home. We know that 60% are under the age of 34. So that's a whole bunch of future moms and dads. And in fact, our youth. That's alarming. What is your mission with Heroes and Horses?
Well, Heroes and Horses, there's 50,000 nonprofits in North America that, between 2012 and the end of 2020, we spent $92 billion on. All right. Every 64 minutes, a veteran commits suicide in North America. So there's a lot of heavily funded institutional failures that are happening around the country. And the thing is that I believe that we've gotten too much, that we've actually gotten to a place where we help people to death. We help people so much that they lose the foundation to help themselves. And in turn, more institutions need to be created, to make up for that problem. And so Heroes and Horses is a 41-day long continuous conversation with yourself. And you're really, we could say, your higher self, right? Who am I outside of experience? Who am I outside of identity? So at Heroes and Horses, there's 41 days, no hot showers. There's 41 days of meditation, 41 days of breath work. There's 41 days of working out. There's 41 days of getting in a sauna. There's 41 days of a cold plunge. Between 500 and 600 miles are ridden on their horses. They'll go through a 41-day leadership and spend 22 days in the backcountry in the wilderness and not be on a cell phone for 41 days. They'll go through 2 Lakota sweat purification ceremonies. They'll go through sound medicine, and they'll hike up physically some of the highest peaks in the state. All of these are tools to shift focus from an individual that is perpetually looking out for answers to be told what to do and what normal looks like and where to go, to a person that looks in for answers and then begins to express kind of that infinite mentality through the finite of what they are. And so they realize that it's always them, right? It's always them. They're living their own creation. They are the masters of their own debt. It's not the military. It's not, it's not their social economic group. What it really is that the obstacles and challenges that they're facing are actually their greatest opportunities. They're just presenting as their worst nightmare right now. And so, so often we look at this and we don't realize that the opportunity is actually contained within the obstacle itself. And so rather than talk about it and to use words experientially, we peel back those layers to who the person is outside of identity and outside of experience. And that takes 2 things. That takes pressure and it takes time.
Yeah,
we're not going to fix the problem taking somebody to eat donuts and float in a tube for 3 days. It takes time to change and to dissolve the kind of these concepts and these boundaries that we have allowed to be placed on us. We've built our own prison, and then we decided there and blame the thing that we built. And so that happens out here on the back of a horse over 41 days through all these modalities that reduce all dependency. I mean, even down to hot water. We got to get back to the core of what we are.
It's quite fascinating with the program you have. Well thought, well put together, and coming from a veteran, designed for veterans. That's priceless. Kyle, military veterans right now are faced with an array of barriers to financial well-being, including a lack of stable employment, difficulties budgeting, making ends meet, limited financial knowledge. The list goes on, and really poor judgment making, really because service members living on a base, to Micah's point, have their basic needs met. They may not have had the opportunity to learn the skills necessary to be financially independent. There's predatory lenders out there, and they tend to target military members and veterans. In fact, the largest concentration of payday lending businesses in the country are in zip codes near military bases. So active duty service members have been found to be 3 times more likely than civilians to take out payday loans. Now, all of this falls on top of the adverse effects on financial security, sometimes caused by multiple deployments that can lead to family instability or job loss. We have about 2 minutes. What financial advice, Kyle, do you have to the large percentage who joined our military to serve our nation?
I would probably give them the similar advice that I'd give anybody who's looking for saving their retirement. You take a certain percentage of your income away, you tuck it away every month, try to take advantage of the opportunities that are given to you, whether it's through your IRA, your Roth IRA, maxing out a 401k if you do decide to work in the private sector, or if you stay in the non-for-profit or 403b. But at the same time, when somebody comes to you with the next best idea or the next magic beans, maybe just push it off to the side and say, you know what, that seems really interesting. That's really not for me. And I just want to invest in the S&P 500 for the long term. If you have children, take advantage of the programs the U.S. government offers us, like the 529 plans where you can save for your children, where it's tax deferred. But really sit down and be prudent with your money, because you're always going to have that pension, but people are always going to prey on you and try to take advantage, especially, which is sad, people should not be taking advantage of the most unfortunate, but that seems to be the way society is sometimes. So I would say stay the course, take advantage of the systems that we have here, and take a certain percentage and tuck it away every month for yourself, for your retirement, and for your children.
Well said right there. Expert advice, president of Revere Securities. All right, Micah, I'll throw this one over to you. We have about 48,000 vets that are homeless. About 41% feel like a guest in their own homes. 84% of veterans say that the American public has little awareness of the challenges facing them and their families. And then we have 71% of Americans saying that they don't understand the problems faced by those who have served since September 11th. What do you say to this?
Well, I think before that we get concerned about what people think about us, I think we have to be more concerned about what we think about ourselves. And, to me, like that's the problem. We spend so much time worrying about what everybody else is thinking about us, or everybody else recognizing our service, which is important. But more importantly is that what are we doing for ourselves, and how are we taking those experiences ourselves and building and growing upon them? If you look at the World War II generation, 42% of those individuals came back and started businesses that are still operating today. We have companies like Comcast and FedEx, right? And then you look at today, the Iraq and Afghanistan veteran generation, 4.5% of those individuals are attempting to become entrepreneurs or start businesses. What happened? What happened in that span of time? And if you look at the numbers and you kind of you play them out, what happened was help institutions came along and began to help people so much that they stopped. The best thing that ever happened to that generation was that there was nothing there for them. They came home, they fought in America's, toughest war. 496,000, individuals were killed during that time. And they showed up at Dad's farm in Iowa and they started a hardware store because they had nothing else to do but to be innovative and entrepreneurial. And that to me is the backbone of what makes America so great. And I think we need to return to that and not be so concerned about what everybody else thinks about us.
Ah, well said. Amen, brother. And with, like you said earlier, you said there's over 65,000 veteran-related nonprofits in the U.S., and all these billions of dollars are spent each year on programming meant to really assist in reintegrating these vets back into civilian life. But at your program, who's eligible for your program, and is there an age limit, really? Because it's very physically demanding.
Yeah, it's physically demanding, it's mentally demanding, and it's spiritually demanding. It's all three. And we don't have an age limit. We have taken a Vietnam vet once. He called me up. I rejected his application, actually. And he called me up and said, "Why'd you reject my application?" And I said, "Well, I'll be honest with you. You could die in this program. Physically, spiritually, mentally demanding." And he goes, "I've been dead for 40 years. I said, "You're selected." And, he's actually at the ranch right now. Today, he's up here volunteering. It completely changed his life. He walked in, he quit all the treatments, quit all the things, and is living an incredible life. So there is no age limit. It's combat veterans. That's who we take. 2.7 million veterans have served. 7,000 have died in that war, and there's 1,500 amputees. So there's more people that are suffering from PTSD or PTS, whatever you want to call it, and all the other things that come along with the byproduct of being in combat. So there's no shortage of individuals that need to come to this program, and everybody that's eligible that's served in the global war on terrorism.
I love it. I love it. And Kyle, when you were over at the ranch, I mean, obviously this was very impactful stuff. I know that you took a lot, you took home a lot from that experience. But right now, when you look at the overall numbers, you have like 94% are proud of their service. 83% are male. We have 17% being female, but we have close to 60% who are married. So in a nutshell, you have a mix of demographics here. And to Micah's point, it's a generation that when they came back from war, there was nothing there for them. So you spoke about financial planning and how kind of important that is and giving them advice. But Is there, from your perspective, is there any benefit for these veterans to be taking whatever money they have left and be reinvesting it into businesses within their communities? Or is it better if they are planning long term so they can seed themselves and their families?
I think it really depends on the person, right? Some people are more more adapt to working in the 9-to-5 job, and maybe they have 4 or 5 kids and they need the help where the wife and the husband are raising the children. So maybe that's better for them to have a long-term outlook and to take the solid job at the Home Depot or the Lowe's or the Johnson & Johnson. But other people are just more entrepreneurial by nature. That is their nature, and they should do whatever they're going to succeed the most in. And again, not to harp on the government, but the government does have a lot of programs out there for people that want to start their own small business, especially for people that are veterans, for people that used to serve law enforcement, first responders, where they will give them almost interest-free loans to go out there and start that carpenter shop, or to go out there in the more, let's say, modern gig economy, do something that's not a carpenter shop, that's something that's much more cutting edge. Who knows? Maybe they're involved in a new drone technology to survey land like where Micah is. So I think there's a lot of things out there, but I think it really depends on the individual. You shouldn't try to take a square peg and put it in a circular hole, because if someone's not entrepreneurial, to force them down that way is probably not the best idea. But at the same time, if someone is entrepreneurial and wants to go out there and work with their own hands, I say, by all means, please do it, because that'd be the best way you can serve yourself and our country.
Very well said. And you're right. And you know what? It takes, these are things that that come roll off your tongue very easy in terms of advice, but there are veterans out there that haven't had the benefit of education, that haven't had mentorship, that haven't even had a parent really present throughout their most formative years. So, this might sound like simple advice, but it really makes an impact, and the segments really, really matter. And right on 710 WOR, which is the voice of New York, we are the top 30th percentile of the income distribution, but we have the most loyal followers for veterans, and the highest amount of donors are the very listeners on the 710 WOR platform. So a lot of them are veterans themselves. So thank you so much for coming on, Micah. God bless you for the work you do. You guys are incredible, and I'm going to keep sending lots of hype your way to make sure people are checking out the website.
Thank you so much. I appreciate the opportunity, and thank you to Kyle and his team and everybody at Revere for all they're doing for us. And we're on a mission, and that mission is to make substantial change that'll be a legacy for American veterans. So thanks for giving us a voice. Appreciate it.
You're doing a great job. All right. That was our Business and Buzz segment brought to us by Revere Securities. That was Kyle Wold, president at Revere Securities, and his good friend, Micah Fink, founder and CEO of Heroes and Horses. Please head to the website. Every donation counts. heroesandhorses.org. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Tempus, the next generation of the engagement economy, allowing people to make money on their data and earn cryptocurrency for the time they spend on things they already currently love to do. With Tempus, brands will have the ability to pay you directly for interacting with apps, watching videos, playing games, and more. Tempus, the time is now. Engage and earn.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I am your host, Zen Sams. Coming up in My Digital World segment brought to you by Tempus Network, we are joined by returning contributor Shahal Khan, CEO of Tempus Network, and he is joined by his really good friend, Adil Kiani, managing director of Bullion FX, which is the world's first gold-backed, fully audited, and autonomous ecosystem. Now, Bullion FX uses gold to bridge traditional banking with the new world of crypto and decentralized finance. And unlike traditional Bitcoin or other crypto mining operations, DeMi, that's right, decentralized gold mine, allows users to access the rewards in physical gold. Think about unlocking the gold mine in your pocket concept. Now, digital banking has revolutionized the user experience, but it has failed to revolutionize the banking system. We are facing a serious challenge where currency markets today are reliant on an inherent trust of institutions that are just no longer seen as trustworthy. And currency as an asset itself is highly volatile and inflationary. It's imperative that we bring a currency back to the gold standard that can be trusted again. There's a growing need now to democratize access and ownership of gold and allow everyone to build their wealth safely in a new global economy. Now, Bitcoin may have applications beyond simply a store of value, and digital asset markets are much bigger than Bitcoin. But we think that comparing its market capitalization to gold can help put parameters on plausible outcomes for Bitcoin returns. And here to chat some more are my experts at hand, Shahal Khan and Adil Kiani. Welcome to the show, stunners.
Thank you very much.
All right, Shahal, I'll start with you. Coins backed by gold are new variants of stable coins, which are typically pegged to the dollar to tame volatility. Now, one of the main concerns that a lot of people who are new to crypto have is that it's not backed by really anything. It just gets on a screen. So attaching them and linking them to a real world commodity does make sense. Now, we know that stable coins, this fast growing breed of crypto, has emerged as a common medium of exchange, and it's often used by traders seeking to move funds around. It is easier to swap major stablecoins for Bitcoin or other crypto, for example, than it is to swap traditional money like US dollars for Bitcoin. What do you say to a gold-backed stablecoin?
The entire financial system at the moment in the Western world that has affected the entire global economy for the last 50 years is based on the Bretton Woods Agreement that was created after World War II. And that agreement essentially put the power of the economy and central banks in the hands of the United States and England. And that system, that it was gold back to 1972, and then Nixon, sort of the strike of a pen, just eliminated that system, where we had freewheeling sort of now central banks printing money as they want to print it. When we look at the current scenario today with central banks increasingly printing money, it's very dangerous as inflation in the normal fiat markets. But a nascent sort of platform of crypto that is supposed to be a alternative to using normal economic tools like a dollar or currencies, let's say like a dollar or a euro, they're even more dangerous to use as stable coins, so-called, if there isn't really auditing capabilities for those currencies as stable coins. So this is why you have a disastrous effect right now that we see when the market started going down. There's supposed to be an uncorrelated effect between the current sort of fiat-related markets and crypto. The exact same thing happened. When people started to go sell crypto, they found out the stable coins really were backed by nothing, or literally a very small amount of reserve. They weren't one-to-one, which is against an asset that was remaining with a stable sort of a value, like gold would. So you saw a tremendous drop in stable coins like Feather. You have other coins that are wanting to step up like Tron, but nobody really knows what's really behind it and where really is that sort of backup liquidity. And this is where a gold-backed stablecoin that has aspects of having staking in gold that's in a vault that's audited could be a very important tool in giving people confidence in the market that there are assets behind that currency.
Absolutely. That's why this concept with Bullion FX makes total sense, which brings me to a question for Adil here. The crypto gold tokens themselves aren't immutable. They're literally just IOUs that happen to be using blockchain infrastructure. So investors would really have to determine whether they have the same level of confidence as they do in traditional banking systems. But let's chat about absolute liquidity. So the business model around gold tokens and traditional retailers is reliant on charging a spread over the global spot price to operate, pay sales commissions, and realize profit. But Bullion FX profits on the utilization of gold within its ecosystem, and as such is the first gold-backed global currency with a business model reliant on gold having pure access to the global spot price and liquidity. Adil, talk to me about why you feel that gold-backed currency is part of the ecosystem's bright future.
I think we're in 21st century, and with the current financial system, we have seen, since Shahal mentioned, since the Second World War, and it's a sad in a way that the financial system we've built, and it has the fundamental flaws, and that fundamental flaws are coming out in every 10 to 15 years, and again the whole financial system gets collapsed because we haven't built an infrastructure. And that infrastructure, in terms of any single financial, if you build any financial product, it needs some sort of base. So unfortunately, what's been happening, that the base of that is a dollar, and dollar is being printed and is being printed, and it will be printed until we have a solid structure and financial system that we can bring back and have an underlying asset. And not only that underlying asset needs to be there, it needs to be audited, it needs to be checked, it needs to be think thorough before you implement anything. So what I think moving forward, dollar, we have a huge problem with the dollar because it's a highly centralized, anyone can print it, right? And when it's printed, and the other problem we see in the current financial system, that is dollar, it's being used as a global currency. So if something happens in financial ecosystem of United States, if it collapses, which is we've seen this collapsing, periodically, then that effect of that can go beyond the United States. And this is what we've been seeing it, and United States being a leader in a financial market and providing a stable sort of so-called stable sort of currency dollar, it's not able to handle it. This whole this is the problem we're seeing. And let's see, like the United States owns like they have $30 trillion debt, and then the rest of 13 trillion debt is, the rest of the world has a 13 trillion debt. So you see, if that 13 trillion, you can print it, but what happens for the rest of the world? Because you are actually, the ecosystem, financial ecosystem is paid with the dollar. Exactly. And that pairing is dangerous because so I think we really need to build some very strong sort of infrastructure and also build some pillars which can move away from the dollar.
It's definitely time to move away.
Yeah, so Boolean FX, with Boolean FX, what we've decided to build a currency which is backed by gold.
Yes, so let's talk about central banks here because we have about 5.5 minutes left in the segment. I want to get to Shahal to tie in exactly what you just said, Adil, and going back in history, when you chat central banks, most people today are only dimly aware that until the early 1930s, gold coins were used in everyday commerce by the general public. And in addition, gold backed most national currencies at a fixed rate of convertibility. Banks were just another business, nothing special. They were distinguished from other enterprises only by the fact that they stored, lent, and borrowed gold coins, not as a sideline, but as a primary business, right? That was their main focus. Bankers had become goldsmiths with hammers, right? And an overwhelming majority of countries around the world use central banks now to manage their economies, but central banks use a variety of tactics known as monetary policy to achieve their mandates. Mainly, however, they manipulate the money supply and interest rates. While it does offer several advantages, this form of what we call centralized structure vests excessive power on a single authority and has resulted in severe economic recessions, to Shahal's point. Shahal, are central banks in trouble, and will this give more power to the decentralized finance?
I'm going to say something a little crazy, but look, I've been in the last few weeks in Dubai, in Austria, in Europe, most in London. There is, when we're outside of the United States, you start to see the amount of people that don't look at the United States as a leader anymore. I mean, it's whatever's going on is really destroying people's confidence in the US, which means then the dollar, right? And the sanctions, for example, that we put on Russia are a joke. First and foremost, the Russian economy in terms of people doing business with it is still going on, right? So that leads back to when people look at what currency they should use, it becomes, they don't want to be affiliated with political warfare, and they don't want to be associated with politics. They want to be able to transfer and do business. And this is where we start to see decentralized finance becoming an important tool that is non-political. And the more and more I sit with people outside of the United States or outside of even Europe, or, if I take myself outside of London and I go to Dubai and I speak to a lot of people from Africa or India or the emerging East, they don't want to deal with the politics of the United States or Europe anymore, or Russia or China. They want to be able to transact business. And that's the true globalization that's going to start. It's going to be people doing trading and economy between each other, using a medium in the middle that they can trust. And it doesn't have to be any of these currencies that are politically led.
Yeah, no, without a doubt. And Adil, this ties back to you, because at Bullion, you are building the bridge between existing decentralized and traditional markets to use crypto as security to borrow in fiat. So one can stake and earn a return on major currencies, including gold. So your DeFi model will allow gold token holders to leverage their holdings to invest it in any manner they choose, including margin trading, peer-to-peer lending, yield farming, or liquidity mining. So that's pretty impressive. But at Bullion, how are you revolutionizing access to equity and capital? Please give me some insight.
Yeah, basically with what we're doing in Bullion FX, we're making sure that we have the asset reserved sort of commodity holding, and that's the most important thing. So whatever the gold actually we offer to our consumer or customer, we'll have the physical gold, and that's physical gold will be audited as well. And that's the most important fundamental element of our business, is that whatever you print, you need to have something back. And this is the gold, I think, is one of the best sort of commodity we've seen in the last thousands of years, that it's the only commodity which can have a backing. And what we did, we partnered with some good reputable auditing firm like Video in Australia. So they'll be auditing our gold and all our assets, and we're making sure the reserves are all there before we distribute it. And we've seen this, like what has happened with the Celsius and Anchor Protocol and Three Arrows last few weeks or so, because they were actually lending people, borrowing from someone and lending in and playing derivative markets, like on going to exchanges and leveraging that. And there's a greed element in industry which we've seen it. And then what has happened, because they didn't have enough reserve, and with the Terra incident, and then suddenly there was no audit in place, and what we've seen then, and this is the catastrophe happen. And this is we really want to minimize risk. And there's
minimize risk
in that. That's perfectly. I think that sums up.
I love it.
Yeah.
I love the way you guys are doing things. Well, that brings us at an end. And I just wanted to say to Shahal, thank you so much for bringing on another very insightful guest. Adil, it was a pleasure talking to you. I just want to thank you guys for coming on and giving us such insight, because these are complicated topics, but we like to bring simplicity to them.
Thank you, Zen.
Thank you very much, guys.
Absolutely. As we get closer to a widespread banking collapse, unfortunately, that is going to happen. Choosing where to put your money is crucial to ensuring it doesn't get caught in the crosshairs. Owning gold is actually pretty essential, if you ask me. Gold has held its value for thousands of years. It has preserved wealth. It has preserved wealth through every kind of crisis imaginable, and gold will preserve wealth during the next crisis too, in my opinion. You definitely have to check out Bullion FX. Head to their website, bullionfx.com. Also head to tempest.network. That was My Digital World, brought to us by Tempest Network. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Tempest, the next generation of the engagement economy, allowing people to make money on their data and earn cryptocurrency for the time they spend on things they already currently love to do. With Tempest, brands will have the ability to pay you directly for interacting with apps, watching videos, playing games, and more. Tempest, the time is now. Engage and earn.
Welcome back, my beautiful friends. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. I'm your host, Zen Sams. Welcoming back to My Digital World, we have our returning contributor, Shahal Khan, CEO of Tempest Network, and he's joined by his good friend, Adil Kiani. All right, we're talking about gold, cryptocurrency, and sanctions on Russia. How does it all tie in? Well, researchers at Russian bank VEB suggested that the country issue a gold-backed stablecoin for international payments to evade sanctions imposed after the invaded Ukraine in February. That's true. The government-owned bank's Institute of Research and Expertise entertained the idea, even proposing a report, all right, to allow Russia to trade internationally, evading sanctions aimed at isolating the country from global capital markets. Now, in this particular case, Shahal, gold can be a useful tool to compensate for the loss of most of Russia's export revenue. For one, the country can sell its reserves to buyers in countries that don't support the sanctions. The deals would be hard to track because they would take place all over they would take place over the counter. And gold can also serve as a backing for a gold and ruble stablecoin. Americans won't have any means to block operations with the crypto gold and ruble because the price will be tied to the price of gold on the global market. So the stablecoin would be used used exclusively for settling import and export transactions, not for payment inside of Russia. What do you say to this? And tie it back to crypto mining in Iraq, as right now the country is successfully using cryptocurrencies to circumvent U.S. sanctions, showing that cryptocurrencies can be a real alternative to the U.S. dollar in certain circumstances. What do you say to this?
Should I go first, then?
Yeah.
So, I think the world is once again looking at the United States. We made a tremendous mistake in this administration, I think, that's here at the moment, in putting sanctions that do not work on Russia. It's made Russia even stronger because at the end of the day, the oil prices are up. The Russians are trading with India, with China, and their economy is getting stronger. And yes, there is rumors of a ruble-backed, coin, right? That is being used in these sort of crypto markets. So at the end of the day, what we have to look at in terms of how the world's changing, once again, as I said, are that, people that are outside of these political systems that have nothing to do with the political fights between the Europe and NATO and Russia want to be able to transact their business and safely and not be worried about losing their savings or not being able to transact because their banks are not talking to each other. On another, level, there's an entire gray market that's being created once again of people transferring money between banks that are accepting those monies outside of the SWIFT system, so the U.S. and other, sort of NATO allies can't trace it, and transacting business there now on a ruble-based system. So it's, what has happened is the exact opposites happen, right? There's been a bifurcation and a split of the dollar-based system. And unfortunately, certain people, didn't realize that would happen. And it's happened, right? So there's been a bit of arrogance on the side of, I think, the United States and Europe to think that no one would leave the dollar-based system, which is really based on oil. And now, for our own economic, sense, we need to wake up because we're $200 trillion in debt. This is going to get passed on to our kids. And this, I'm just so frustrated. I'm a very proud American, and we're destroying our society. And I'm not saying that a gold-backed crypto coin is going to solve it, but if we start losing trust in our economy and we don't start to adapt to what's going on in the world, we won't have an economy, for our kids to be a part of. So we have to start getting with the system, and we have to start working with the system rather than against it.
Yeah, well said. Especially when you're looking at what's it's falling apart at the seams. This is the current structure that we have in place no longer works. And you said it. Our children are going to inherit this insane debt, and it's going to be too late to fix anything. Which is another interesting. It segues me to just to another concept, because one of the initial goals, and maybe Adil could answer this one, but one of the initial goals of crypto and DeFi is really to promote financial inclusion by ensuring that the 1.7 billion people worldwide who don't have a bank account, and nearly half the world's population without an active bank account, right, can access the same benefits, paying bills, accessing insurance, and creating a pension pot as those participants do in traditional finance. But to do so, blockchain technology has been designed in such a way that right now it is accessible to anyone with a smartphone. So with 91% of people worldwide owning a smartphone, this design has opened the door to thousands of people considered unbanked. And in countries such as Venezuela, where exchanging currencies is difficult, it has allowed people to really protect their savings from inflation by exchanging their fiat for crypto. Adil, what do you say to this? And is there room for the gold concept to really piggyback here on the 1.7 billion people in the world that are unbanked? Can they get their hands on this?
Of course they can. I think the most important bit is when we talk about gold, we need to talk about the assets, actually, or mineral assets or commodities held underground as well. So this is what one of the Boolean FX's concept, and which we actually in a beta testing to do it with a gold mine in Australia. Actually, we need to build infrastructure, financial infrastructure around the gold, which is underground. So what happened with the gold? I think 97% of gold is used for the financial hedging, and only 3% gold is being used for the jewelry purposes in one of the actually developing countries, which is gold is like a very solid asset. But what we're saying, environment gold. So what do you do when you take the gold out from land? What you're doing, you're playing around with the matter and destabilizing the infrastructure, environment infrastructure, and ecosystem of the world as well, because you're taking the mineral out. When you take any mineral out or any commodity out, actually you're tilting the chemical balance of it. So moving forward, this in these countries like in Africa or in the Middle East, even Asia, and they hold a large gold asset underneath. So what we've decided as a beta testing, so what we should be doing, what Bullion FX will be doing, digitalizing the underground gold, so you can do the JORC reporting and see, how much is gold underneath, and build and bring that system into blockchain and then audit it around it. And the country can use their assets instead of US dollars, so you can build a token which is backed by gold. Because when central banks or any reserve banks, they print the money, they just print the money because it's just that so you can say, okay, I'm printing something which is a gold back, and this is the asset, I hold it.
And
so
you already have that in your reserve. It's brilliant. It's brilliant. You're revolutionizing the game with something that's been around for hundreds of years and putting it to great use, combining it with blockchain technology, verifiable ledgers. This is a great infrastructure. We are out of time. Shahal, thank you so much. Adil, thank you for coming on. Always a pleasure chatting with you, my friend.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Adil. Thank you so much.
Pleasure. Thank you, Shahal. Thank you, Zen.
Absolutely. Have a great day, guys. That was My Digital World, brought to us by Tempest Network. That was CEO Shahal Khan of Tempest Network. And that was Adil Kiani of Bullion FX. You definitely have to check out their website, bullionfx.com and tempest.network. You're listening to A Moment of Zen right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York. We'll be right back after this.
A Moment of Zen is brought to you by CCP Digital, bringing you a view from inside blockchain, cryptocurrency, and NFTs. Introducing the latest Blockchain Heroes series, Retro Rebellion NFT collectible card packs from the Nifty Company. Available January 2022. Find out more online at ccpdigital.com. A Moment of Zen is brought to you by Hi There, a creative community exploring the culture, craft, and science of cannabis. Hi There believes that we have a collective responsibility towards eradicating the stigma, misinformation, and inequities surrounding this plant so we can unlock its true potential for all. To become involved and find out what all the excitement is about, download the Hi There app from the App Store and Google Play. Hi There, HIGHTHERE.
Well, that's a wrap, my dear friends. We are at the end of our date. Remember to join me right here on 710 WOR, the voice of New York, every Saturday night from 9 to 10 p.m. Or you could head to 710WOR.iHeart.com/A Moment of Zen. And remember, we're now on TV. You can download the KP Media TV app on Roku, Amazon Fire, Apple TV, or Android TV. And you could tune in at impact.kpmedia.tv and catch A Moment of Zen right there on the Impact Live channel, Sundays at 11 a.m. Eastern. All episodes are now available on demand. Thank you for listening to A Moment of Zen. It has been an absolute pleasure being your host. Thanks again to all of our sponsors that make this show possible. And remember, happiness is the only thing that multiplies when you share it.